Deebo speaks for the first time since getting his contract extension. And is this the best team that the 49ers have had in the Shanahan Lynch era? Suneil and I talk about that and more next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday. I got my boy back with me. We were unable to get the show last week. Suneil was a little too busy for your boy, but he is back. We're ready to rock. Suneil, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Just gotta let it breathe a little bit, so to keep them wanting more, right? Keep them wanting more. But we back. We're about to have a great show.
Oh, you went full polo gang too. I love it.
Need that.
All right, brother. Hey, let's jump into it. So, a couple things to talk about with Deebo. I haven't really talked about the extension. I don't know if you've done shows and talked about his extension, but let's talk about the extension a little bit. How you feel now that everything has happened and he's actually going to be a part of the 49ers long term. And Deebo actually spoke today for the first time since really the whole thing started. I mean, the last time that we heard from Deebo was around Super Bowl time. And I think everybody thought an extension was for sure going to happen. It was going to take some time, what have you. And then everything went crazy in the offseason. Social media, people talking for him, people making up assumptions. So now that it's done, how do you feel about the whole situation? And if you heard Deebo talk today, any takeaways that you may have had from that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, with the deal, thank God now it's there. Now Deebo's on the field. He's already making plays, so that's great to see. I think it was, I think the deal itself was right around the lines of what most of us thought it was going to be. It ended up being a 3-year deal, making it like, he's with the team for at least another 4 years. He seems happy with the deal. The team seems happy with it. So it kind of just, I kind of say kudos to the 49ers. So really just sticking to their guns, because it was both of us really thought that Deebo probably wasn't coming back, right? Because we believe the social media hype as far as that. I mean, Deebo talked about it as far as like, this is a business. So I think he was ready to be playing for another team if he didn't get the deal that he was looking for. And I think the 49ers were actually, listening to offers. And if they saw something that they really liked, I think that we could be talking about Deebo not even being a 49er this year. However, I'm glad that cooler heads prevailed. Kyle Shanahan was pretty consistent with his talk throughout the Deebo situation. I'm glad that the 49ers brass finally got it done. We both believe that Deebo is, one of the best weapons, if not the best weapon on offense, definitely for the 49ers, but, one of the best in the league altogether. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very happy that it's done. As far as his actual press conference, I did catch a little snippets here and there. I just like the fact that, he's repping his team, right? He was wearing a Brandon Ayuk shirt. So it's just like, he talked about, Trent Williams. And I just think that it's good to see he's still part of this team. These are still his brothers. And I think that's going to bode well, because at the end of the day, when week one starts, right now, even in training camp, it doesn't matter what happened up until this point. He's there. He's ready to go. And they're on the field. And now we could officially say that this is one of the best wide receiving cores in the league, right? So now that Deebo's officially there back in practicing.
Absolutely. Caesar, we're going to talk about this. A lot of people talking about the fight. We'll touch briefly on that. It definitely needs to be talked about. I want to talk about this comment, though, because I think Itchy is spot on. 3 years seems ideal. Not only, though, for Deebo Samuel, not only for the 49ers, but also Deebo Samuel, right? Deebo Samuel is a little bit older. We talked about this in the past, 26 years old. Well, now at the end of this 3 years, he's going to be 29. He can go and get paid again. So this is really, really good for Deebo Samuel. This is really good for the 49ers as well, especially those fans that were thinking it through and, he's injury prone and what have you. I also like that they added the incentives in there for the running side, right? He can get more money if he runs for X amount of yards or if he runs for X amount of touchdowns, which completely nips in the bud the notion that Deebo was unwilling to be a wide back, right?
Right.
And that was some of the things that we talked about. Like, is Deebo worth paying X dollars if he's not going to run the ball at all? Well, all of that is squashed. I'm glad that all the rumors are put to rest. I'm glad that Deebo is back with the team and practicing. I really do like the way that the 49ers handled it as training camp started, allowing him to just kind of work out on the side, do his thing, knowing that they were going to get a deal done, but doing what was best for the player as well. I think they handled that beautifully. And at this point, like, all the other stuff is put away, and we got to see him get that continuity with Trey Lance. He talked about that a little bit, how they got to work through that. But I'm just ultimately excited that my favorite player in the league is back with the 49ers for the next 4 years, essentially. We got 4 more seasons of Deebo Samuel minimum in a 49er uniform, and that is a fantastic thing. So I'm excited about that.
Right. And that 3-year timeline puts him right at the new money for Trey and also Brandon Ayuk. So they put themselves in a situation where they have options as far as what they decide to do. So that, I mean, overall, I think it was a good situation. It's a good situation for the 49ers. And now, everybody that we want to be there is there, ready to get ready for the season.
Absolutely. And a couple of people are talking about the fight in practice. No, there are no videos that I've seen anyways about the fight. However, Ayuk was on NFL Network right after practice. He talked about the fight. I mean, he seemed like it was no big deal. It's just what happens. People get heated. And it was kind of brewing for about a week. He talked about it, how Fred Warner was kind of pestering him a little bit. And Fred Warner talked about how he's trying to make people better. And these things happen. It's competition. You're trying to get the best out of players as a leader. Fred Warner's doing that. And it worked. I mean, quite frankly, it sounds like Brandon Ayuk went off after the fight. So, I don't think it's a big deal. I actually have no issue with it. I mean, this brothers fight. That's just the way that it is. I mean, if you ever grew up with a sibling, boy, girl, what have you, you probably fought. So this is the way that it is. Did you take anything from the fights, or are you worried at all? Or, what was your thoughts about those?
It just shows that these guys are locked in and competitive right from jump, right? These guys know what's on the table. I think everybody that's in 49ers right now are pretty much Super Bowl or bust type of mentality. And I think they're just trying to iron sharpens iron right now. So I think Fred Warner is obviously one of the leaders of the team, trying to just make sure that he does everything in his part to get people ready. So, I mean, fights are going to happen. It's just this one made it out, right? Otherwise, I'm sure there's a lot of fights that just never make it into the media.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, I heard Grant and some other people talk about this is the first fight they've seen in the Shanahan Lynch era, but this is not out of the ordinary for even some Super Bowl winning teams. There was a lot of big stories that came out from that 94 team with brawls in practice. This is what competitive teams do. Tensions get high. Keith says, I'm glad. Go ahead.
This might be the first fight between 49ers as far as a team. But we do know on the defensive side, these guys are feisty and are willing to fight, right? Jimmy Ward during like a joint practice and stuff. So it's not like this is out of the ordinary that these guys are that jazzed and juiced up as far as adrenaline to go out there and fight. These guys really aren't going to back down, and it's good. I think Brandon Ayuk is ready as well, understanding that he needs to put up this year as well. So I think the guys that are involved are all guys that you want to see ready to go at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And Keith says, I'm glad Deebo is back, but the type of season he had, I don't know if it can be duplicated. So how would you project this season for Deebo? I agree with you, by the way. I don't think it will be duplicated, but I don't think it needs to for him to earn his pay. I think if Deebo is getting targeted at the clip he was last year, or getting the ball at the clip he was, he certainly can repeat it. I think he has all the skill level to do it. And quite frankly, I don't think he's really stoppable. But I do expect that Ayuk is going to break out a little bit more this season. I expect Jennings going into his third season being a factor all season as well. And naturally, the 49ers do not want to pass the ball a ton. And so, with that being said, I don't expect Deebo to go crazy like that. But, instead of 1,800 yards, I could see him at 1,500 total yards all in, still around 8 to 10 touchdowns all in. And I think that that's what we can expect from Deebo, and I'm totally fine with that. What about you, Suneil?
Yeah, and I mean, like you mentioned, I do expect the running game to be better this year from just that running back room because they're all so young and healthier. So a lot of why Deebo was put into that quote unquote wide back position was because they weren't getting the spark out of the running back room, especially when Elijah Mitchell got banged up. So a lot of key components would lead us to be a safe bet that is going to be under whatever he did last year, but that doesn't negate the impact that he's going to have. He's still going to be the number one receiver. The defenses are still going to be eyeing him and making sure that they know where he is at all times. And I think he's still going to be, a highly productive receiver, maybe not to the extreme that he was last season, but he still easily could be another 1,000-yard receiver, with, 200-300 yards rushing when all said and done. Like you said, about 10 touchdowns when all said and done between receiving and running. So I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be as prolific, but it's still going to be extremely impactful.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, too, it's interesting that they put the incentives in there for the running game. I still don't think that they're going to run him a ton. I don't think that they ever wanted to run him a ton, at least not as a traditional running back. I think the end arounds, the jet sweeps, those types of things, that's what I would expect in a running game from Deebo. I think they would prefer that he gets out on the edges and is going against smaller players. I don't think they really want him running up the A gap with those fat daddies in the middle there to hurt him, essentially. I don't think they want him one-on-one with an Aaron Donald, right? Like, that's the type of things that they're trying to avoid. So I do expect that they will use him a lot like they did in the past and stretch the field horizontally with him. And now that Trey is there and they can stretch the field vertically with Trey's arm, it's going to be tough to figure out the 49ers offense. It's going to be tough to guard these guys because what part of the field is not going to be utilized in this Shanahan offense? Good luck, defenses. Good luck.
I agree.
Keith, let me show you some love, man. We appreciate it. Here you go. All right. Let's get off the Deebo thing and let's talk about the offensive line issues or perceived issues. There's a lot of chatter, and this chatter is not new chatter. This is chatter that's been around for months. I mean, we talked about it all offseason. You were a little bit more optimistic than I was, although I don't think I was hitting the panic button. I just thought that there was some reason to be concerned a little bit. You didn't seem to really be too worried about it. But I want to note one major change that's happened since the beginning of training camp that I don't think any of us accounted for. And that's that they're reworking the whole interior. I think we looked at it and said, okay, we know who our left tackle is. We know who the right tackle is. We know who the right guard is. We believe that Banks can play well. And then, we'll see how Brendel does. But we didn't expect a whole rework of the interior. I think that we penciled in Brunskill, and we were okay with that, by the way, Brunskill playing, because he's not a bad player at right guard. But all of a sudden they start mixing him into center. And then today he seemingly lost any snaps he was getting. The whole situation is a little out of whack compared to at least what I think expectations were here on this show and conversations we had. So overall, what is your panic meter? We'll go 1 to 100. Panic meter on the offensive line, and then just anything that's on your mind pertaining to the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, obviously early on, I was more optimistic about this. So panic meter 1 to 100, I'm probably at a good 65, maybe 70. And the reason for that is we just don't know what the actual lineup is going to be. And the 65 is probably more 65, just because they seem to be, from all things that I'm reading, is that the run blocking is still right where it needs to be. It's just the pass rush is getting to the receivers now, or getting to the quarterback now. With that being said, the 49ers defense is really, really good. So they're not going to be dealing with this type of talent against many times in the NFL. 49ers defense is really good. But I do think that the gift and the curse of training camp is this is like the first chance that everybody gets to see the team and pads and all that kind of stuff. But this is also the first chance that the coaching staff has to really see what they have and work different lineups and practice, right? And one of the problems with practice is everything's getting overanalyzed, everything's being looked at, everything's being isolated to one or two plays, and it's not looking good. Let's be honest, but it's also very, very new. Like you said, they're reworking everything. So do they expect it to be a finished product in week 1 of training camp? Anybody that expects that and is just like, yo, this offensive line is trash, all that kind of stuff, that's what practice is for. I do actually like that maybe Brunskill is doing more at center, because it is going to be nice to see a guy like Burford get the opportunity there at right guard, or Jalen Moore gets because it seems like some of these guys do have ability, and it would be nice to see a younger offensive line there that could be a little more athletic than like if you can't get the same type of talent because a couple of guys left, at least go younger, more athletic, and develop these guys to keep pushing, into the future. But overall, it is something to keep an eye on. This is obviously the weakest position group for the 49ers at this time. So something to pay attention to, but I'm more interested in what they look like at the end of training camp versus the beginning of training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. My concern is the continuity. And I've talked about this a lot. They are mixing and matching a lot, and they're going to end up with the 5 best guys, which is great. But do those 5 guys have continuity by the time the season starts, and really by week 3? Because week 1 and 2, they should win those games regardless. But by week 3, that's when the schedule starts to really pick up. And do they have that continuity? That is a concern of mine. And like I said, I never really expected that Brunskill wouldn't be playing right guard. I mean, I thought that was a lock, and I was very comfortable with Banks. I felt like he would take a step this year. And then it just came down to that center position. But now it's like, okay, I'm trying to look at the positive. Maybe Burford is just really good, right? And he deserves to be the right guard. And if that's the case, that's awesome. I also think that it can be a good thing that Brunskill working at center, we also know he can play right guard, that he can be a backup for either of those spots if something happens, and something that we can be comfortable with. As a starter, I don't think, like, I just don't like him at center as the starter. Like, as a backup, sure. But as a starter, I don't feel comfortable with that whatsoever. From the little that I've seen of him working with Trey Lance after practice, his snaps did not look good at all. And his drop is very, very different. I mean, he allows a little bit of push up the middle, and then that can cause some issues with Trey Lance and the pocket closing quicker. I don't like it. I don't like him at center. As a backup, I'm cool with it, but not as the starter. So from what I've heard and what I've seen, I'm not comfortable with it. And then that goes back to, is Burford for sure a better right guard? I don't know. It's just a lot of continuity issues going on. I'm not at full panic mode. I'm probably at 80%, but this is something that any tension or any conversation that was had about it in the offseason, any worry, that has not gone away at all. In fact, I feel like that's certainly heightened in most people's eyes. So we'll see how it plays out, but it is something that they need to get rectified, because all the other things that we talk about, at least offensively, really don't matter if this offensive line can't hold up. And that's just the way that the NFL works. So hopefully they get it figured out very quickly.
And to just give Brunskill some bail, he has started at the position for the 49ers, and how much you put into PFF ratings and all that kind of stuff. As far as his actual numbers, they weren't terrible. So it wasn't like he's just this liability at center. And when it comes to continuity, unfortunately, just because that we lost 2 players, right? One to retirement, one through free agency. It's always going to be, you're going to have to start from scratch now. So I do like the fact that it's kind of like clean slate. Everybody has to earn their position. And like you said, the best 5 are going to make it. This is unfortunately the only shot that they have at fixing that. So it's just obviously not going to look the best when you're still trying to put pieces in to kind of see where they fit best. But I do imagine week after week, this is also going to be the position group that you start seeing the most improvement in as well, because they're the ones that, are starting from the worst, I guess you could say, starting point of all the other position groups. So for me, it is something to pay attention to, but it also is something that I believe will be fixed in time for when the season's ready to go. And like I always mention, however much the faithful are worried about the offensive line or think that the offensive line is the biggest issue, Kyle Shanahan understands what his offense looks like and how important that offensive line is. He's going to make sure he has a product there, because if the offensive line can't hold up in the rush attack and pass attack, he looks like an idiot, because that's his, calling card is the offense. So I have faith in Shanahan that he'll make sure that the best product is there based off of who they have, or if they end up needing to bring somebody in to fix that, a la Treader or whatever it is.
Absolutely. And 49er gang, I think this is a great comment. He says, I don't think the O-line has to be lights out. It just has to be efficient. Yeah, I mean, if it's middle of the pack, I think that's fine. They don't have to be the best O-line in the league by any means. I'm just worried that they may not even be middle of the pack. And that really could hold this team back, because, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later, just how good this team is, just how good the defense is, and some of those other things. But man, that offensive line, if it's not efficient enough, it's going to hold back what could be a Super Bowl caliber team. And that'd be unfortunate. It would really be unfortunate. So I think going hand in hand with the offensive line, though, is Trey's progression. And, neither you or I are at training camp, but we both know many people that are. Mm-hmm. We get all the reports. We can draw our own conclusions. And I will say that I think Trey's been fine, but I think he's underwhelmed in some people's eyes and what their expectations are for Trey Lance. And I think it's interesting to see how people react to it. It has given me the confirmation that I need to know that if this team doesn't make it far, or if Trey struggles, people are going to pile on, because they're piling on based off of some practice numbers, which is absolutely wild to me. That being said, Trey is going through it a little bit. It sounds like he's getting better day by day. He's getting some of his weapons back. That is helping. But just overall, from what you've heard of Trey's training camp, some of the quote unquote inaccuracy issues or timing issues, what have you, how do you feel about Trey's progression and the things that you're hearing and talking to people about?
Yeah, so I mean, clearly, he's had a couple of high interception days. Let's put it that way. But it wasn't that long ago that Jimmy Garoppolo threw 5 interceptions in a day in training camp as well. So it's not like this is unheard of, right? This is practice, and very, very early in practice. So these are where you're actually working on things to perfect it. And when you're perfecting something, anybody that's played any type of sports or done anything for the first time, or you're trying something new or trying to work something into your game, it's not going to look good at first. And the goal is not for him to be perfect immediately. The goal is for him to, like you said, progress. And in all of those reports that I'm reading, they're putting up the stats, but then later on in those articles, they're saying he's getting better throw after throw. He's getting better day after day, right? We're also seeing the most wow plays that we've seen from a quarterback in training camp as well, right? So it's not just, you got to balance out it all. Right now, is Trey Lance where we want him to be as far as we're confident that he's he's the quarterback that could lead a team to the Super Bowl or be on a Super Bowl caliber roster and lead that team deep into the playoffs? We don't know yet. They're still just working things in. But I think the key word you said is progression. The team buys into him. There is work to do, but we all know, based off of everything we've seen from him in his short time with the 49ers, one thing that there is no question about is his work ethic. And he's willing to work, and he's going to continue to work. And now that we know he's QB1, we're going to be able to once again see the progression day after day, week after week. And I just you need to, for the media and all that kind of stuff, to get the clicks and all that kind of stuff. You need to kind of dissect every single day of training camp, because that's all that's there. But for me, like I said, just like the offensive line, I want to see where they are a few weeks from now. Are we seeing a better product, or are we still seeing the same mistakes over and over again? Then maybe there's cause for concern. But one week into training camp, Jesse, not much is going on that there's that much cause for concern.
No, definitely not. And I've been keeping a close eye on all the other quarterbacks in division and the other quarterbacks that were rookies with Trey. And you're hearing a lot of the same things, right? A lot of the same struggles. Mac Jones was like 1 of 11 in red zone periods. Justin Fields 3 days ago threw 5 passes to the defense. Like, these are things that other players are going through, and in many cases worse, right? But I also have to go back to what Fred Warner said last year. And what we know is true now is that the practice videos that leaked during the offseason of Trey Lance happened around the time that Fred Warner talked about this situation. But he said that Trey wasn't giving them the looks that they needed because he wasn't willing to basically air it out. He wasn't willing to be himself. He was so worried about being perfect and not making mistakes. And even throwing in one interception, it just was something he was trying not to do. And so he wouldn't take a lot of risks. And eventually he broke through that. And a lot of conversations with Fred Warner led to him breaking through that. And that's when they started to see that he was willing to play with some risk, right? And this is something that I've talked about with Trey Lance, is that my biggest concern, even though that physically he has all the tools to go and air it out and be a dynamic quarterback, I think mentally he's actually a lot more conservative than what people want to think. And when you look at his college career not having any interceptions, I think it speaks to that a little bit. He does want to play perfect football. And because of that, he is going to be conservative. But you can't do that in practice. You got to figure out what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. And you got to take some chances. Practice is the time to make those mistakes. And I think if Fred Warner had not gotten into his ear, we would probably be hearing a very clean training camp from Trey Lance. Probably not a lot of risk taken, probably none or hardly any turnovers. But I also don't think that Trey would be getting better because of it. And so I like to hear that he's figuring it out. I like to hear that he's making mistakes. And I like to hear that he's getting better each and every day. And he's doing it with his back against the wall, with a makeshift offensive line, without Deebo Samuel. And he's going against maybe the best defense in the league. It's only going to get easier from here. And Suneil, I want to talk about a fight training camp. You and I are both mixed martial arts fans. We talk very frequently about mixed martial arts on the side. And that being said, what do we always hear from fighters in camp? They are fighting against multiple people that are bigger, stronger, faster than them, that are putting them in scenarios that they're not good in and getting their butt kicked every day, so that when they enter the fight, nothing surprises them and they're ready for that, whatever is thrown their way. And that's what I feel like is happening here with Trey Lance. I feel like they're putting him in every position to fail so that when the games come, He's extremely comfortable, and there's nothing that's going to surprise him. So I like to hear that Trey Lance is quote unquote struggling more than what people thought. But what I can tell you is he's also making those wow plays that I don't think would have ever been drawn out of him on a regular basis if he continued to be that conservative player. So that's my take about Trey Lance and his progression.
Yeah, and just to your point as well, that kind of shows more confidence in him as well. Like just the two mindsets that you just talked about from when Fred Warner was saying he was kind of playing within himself so that he wasn't really airing it out and making mistakes because he was so afraid. The fact that he's comfortable enough now to make those kind of mistakes shows an actual progression that is a good sign for a guy that's going to go into his first year as a full-time starter. It's like he's working on aspects of his game as well. And the truth is, they might start seeing things that they're like, you know what? Trey isn't that good at this. So then Shanahan's not going to put him in those positions, during actual games. Maybe they do need to like protect him a little bit in certain areas. And that's not a bad thing either. All quarterbacks have their things that they're not the best at. Like even the GOAT, Tom Brady, you're not putting him in situations where he has to be mobile, right? That's like something that they have to stay away from because he's not mobile. Peyton Manning, the same kind of thing. You're not putting him in places that he's going to have to use his athleticism to get out of places. So every player has their strengths and weaknesses, and it's up to the coaching staff to make sure that they call a game that's puts their quarterback in the best case scenario. But we're not in game time right now. We're in training camp. So at this point, you got to find out what you have, what you're good at, what you could get better at. And, that's, I think, where we're at. So I like the fact, like you said, the confidence in that Trey's actually attempting everything, even though he might not get the result that he's looking for.
Absolutely. And there's some good comments here, and I want to go through a couple of them. Carlos says that Grant said today that Jimmy throws a better short pass than Lance. The 49ers offense is historically based on short passes. Is this a legit concern? No, I don't think so. I think two things that I take away from this comment. One, yes, the 49ers offense is historically based on short passes. I don't know that Shanahan's offense is predicated on the short pass. I mean, the Falcons was a great example of that. Even when he had Schaub at quarterback, he was pushing the ball downfield. So I think that Shanahan is cool with pushing the ball down the field. But also, let's give Jimmy some credit. Again, Jimmy is a starting level quarterback in this league, and he does some things well. And one of the things that he does well is his throws are on time. And a lot of that means short passes. That is where he excels. And I know that we talk about that a lot, and there's a lot more to be desired with stretching the field vertically and horizontally. But it's also what has allowed this offense to stay on schedule throughout the years. Yes, there's a lot more to be desired. That's why Trey Lance is here. But Jimmy does some things well, and that is one of the things that he does do well. And Lance certainly needs to work on that. I mean, let's look at the very first pass that he threw against Seattle. Like, what was that, right? And then when we saw him against the Texans, one of the throws that I really tried to point out, everybody was talking about the throw to Kittle, the throw to Ayuk, the throw to Deebo. But one of the best throws that I thought he made was when the pocket was collapsing around him, he moved up in the pocket. It was, I think, the very next play, they got a touchdown. He threw it to Mitchell on a dump off, but it was third down, and he moves up and just finds Hasty leaking out to the left for a couple yards to get the first down and keep the chains moving. That throw excited me as much as any in that game because I felt like that's an area that he needs to work on, is just taking the check down, knowing where the check down is, and not being afraid to use it. I will say, from what I've heard in this training camp, he has really come a long way with that, and I think that will be important to him being successful as well. So, no, I'm not concerned about it at all. Suneil, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit everything on the nail. Like Jimmy is elite when it comes to release time and those short passes. And he's a middle of the pack or quarterback overall, but he's probably a very, very top quarterback when you're talking about those specific attributes, right? So that Jimmy throws that ball better than Trey doesn't mean that Trey's throwing a horrible ball. It just means that Jimmy is really good at that. So should it be a cause for concern? No, I do think that those short passes are going to be still a big part of this offense. But that I don't think that Jimmy throws a better ball means that Trey isn't up to task as far as his ability to throw that short ball. He might not be as good at Jimmy right away, but we don't expect him to be better in every aspect than Jimmy. We don't need him to be better in every aspect than Jimmy. We just need him overall the game to be better or at least on par. And I don't necessarily see that being what the narrative is that Trey looks way worse than Jimmy at the same point, because the truth about Jimmy was he never looked very good in training camp either, but he was still able to play well enough for this team to go deep in, multiple different playoff runs. So take that with whatever grain of salt you want.
Raymond checking in. He says, if you had to choose between Brendel and Brunskill, who are you predicting as a starter? I'll let you take that one, Suneil.
Yeah, initially I thought it was when I first came out and we knew Alex Mack retired, I thought it was going to be Brunskill. Then all of a sudden it was, everybody was saying it's Brendel, and I kind of jumped on that. But I can see where Brunskill ends up being the play caller there, just because with that much new turnover at the offensive line, we all know that Kyle Shanahan tends to want to go with a seasoned vet over a newer player. And even though Brendel's been in the league, he hasn't started in the league that much. So I could see where Kyle Shanahan wants to go with Brunskill as that signal caller from the center position, and then have maybe newer guys at the guard positions and still have your seasoned vets at the tackle positions, and saying that might be the best way to have success, because now those newer players are sandwiched between two vets on each side. So I could see that being the reason why maybe Brunskill ends up having like the lead in the locker room. And overall, I would say if Burford or Moore or something like that really shows out or shows that they could be up to status, I think that they would want Brunskill there at center for that reason.
Yeah, I think that Brendel's going to win that job. I do agree with you. I think that they want Brunskill to win the job because of everything you just said. I just don't think he's going to be good enough at center. I think Brendel has played the position for a long time. It's something he's used to. Him and Trey do have that partnership between them. They were on the scout team together last year. And I just think ultimately that he's going to prove out to be the better center. And Brunskill, again, will make this team. He'll be the backup center / right guard. And if they have an injury, then at least we know that we got a seasoned vet coming in at either spot. So, but, we'll see how it plays out either way. Looks like Riddy says, watch the strength of Bosa violently throw Juszczyk to the ground flat on his face today at camp. Split second, 2-3 piece. Incredible Hulk style. I've never seen anything like it. Wild. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that, Suneil, but Bosa's special, man. Bosa, he's if you come off of an ACL and you get 15 sacks, or you come in after being injured in college multiple times or what have you, and then you come into the NFL with really no training camp and do what he did, he's just a different animal. The 49ers are very lucky to have him. He's going to be a part of the 49ers for a long time. And I don't know if you guys saw the picture, but there was a picture that somebody took. He was signing autographs for 2 kids. This dude's thighs are like, what the heck? He seriously looks like a caricature. It's wild. This man is built perfectly to get after the quarterback, and he is showing out in training camp. I heard he beat Trent Williams a couple times today, made it look kind of easy. He's just a different animal, an absolutely different animal. So yes, Bosa, 18. Let me ask you this: over under 17.5 sacks for Bosa this year. What do you think, Suneil?
I would probably push. Oh, I guess you can't do. Yeah, you can do 17.
Yeah, you can do a half.
I think he's going to be right there. I think he's going to be more than 15 that he did last season. And I don't think that 17, 18 sacks is out of the realm of possibility, especially because I do expect this offense to be more prolific. So that means that they're going to be in opportunities to pass, actually rush the passer, because the offense is actually scoring points. So that I think is going to lead to the 49ers or Bosa getting more stacks, as well as him having a better secondary behind him for the first time, right? So all of those things I think leads to him having a couple extra seconds or maybe an extra second to get to the quarterback. And if you give him an extra second, I'm going to bet on Bosa over pretty much anybody in the league time after time. And dude's looking like a superhero, bro. Like he's looking like he's about to be in the Avengers as it's insane what this dude looks like. And that's not Photoshop or like any type of thing. That's just all natural. Like he's not even flexing and you see like a 12 pack. It's insane.
Absolutely. Really, we appreciate the comment. Here you go, brother. All right, let's see if I missed anything.
Yeah, 49ers throwback had one.
Yeah, we got this one by Miguel. He says Alex Mack will be the starter week 1. That's bold. You think he's coming out of retirement? I wouldn't be mad at that. Based off of everything we've seen and heard, I would not be mad at that. So let's speak it into existence. Why not? 49ers throwback tapping in. He says, I like when Trey Lance makes a mistake and he bounces back from it. I also liked when Trey takes accountability. He's a true leader. Yeah, and you heard some of that leadership show up again today when Deebo was talking. He talked about how Trey Lance reached out to him multiple times, checked in with him, make sure everything was going good. Trey Lance, that's, again, the least of my concerns is what he has mentally. We know that physically he has all the tools, and he's eventually going to put it all together and get the best. Like Trey Lance is going to be the best player he can be. How good that is ultimately, we'll see. But I have no doubts that Trey Lance is going to get the best out of his abilities when it's all said and done, because he works extremely hard. He's very intelligent. He is a good leader. And so we'll see what that ceiling is, but it's not going to be a situation where you look at somebody super talented and be like, man, they just didn't have it mentally. Like they could have been so much more if only they had done X, Y, and Z. Trey's going to get the best out of his abilities, like bar none, whether that's top 5 in the league, top 10 in the league, top 20 in the league, or a backup quarterback. Whatever his abilities are, he's going to get the best of them. And we'll see what those are long term for sure. And I think there's one more, maybe.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, Carlos. Best 49ers player right now. Ooh, this is dang, that's a really, really good question. Suneil, I'm going to let you take this one first. I got to think about this.
I'd probably go Trent Williams. Okay. I tweeted after his press conference, or his, like, when he was talking to the media a couple days ago, he is worth every single penny of that contract, not only for his play on the field, but just the type of leadership that he has. I think it was a great move. I think he loves it here, and he's really dispelling a lot of the narratives that were surrounding him when he was playing for Washington. And I think it's just been a big, big sigh of relief for him. And just, I think us as the faithful really are blessed that we are able to get him in right now, and what he's been able to do as far as his play, how he handles himself at the mic. And you're starting to see his impact as far as a leader on guys like Deebo, on guys like Trey, and across the offensive line. That's the aspect. I don't know if you remember, Jesse, but when we were talking about Trent Williams when he first came, the question was, can he be a leader? And at that point, they didn't really need it because of some of the other guys that were on it. But the answer is absolutely. Like, not only can he be a leader, he might be one of the best leaders on this team. So I think that actually is the best player, not only on the field, he's the best left tackle in the game, but his leadership ability also, in my books, makes him the best player.
Yeah, he I would probably agree. And if you had asked me last year, was he the most important player? I would have said no. I would have said Deebo. But this year, he is also the most important player because the offensive line is in shambles without him, right? Like this offensive line is not going to function without Trent Williams. And that's for as good as Trent is, he misses games every year. He does. And so that's a concern of mine. When he misses that inevitable game or two, what happens? How do they win those games? So that will be something to look out for. But yeah, I mean, Trent Williams right now is, I mean, at the height of who he's ever been as a player. He's great in pass protection. He's great in run blocking. He is a leader. I mean, Deebo talked about he was the guy that he confided in throughout this whole process. I mean, Trent Williams is that deal right now, and that says a lot when you got guys like Bosa and Deebo and Warner and Kittle. There's a lot of really good players on this team, and he is the best of the best. So, yeah, I agree with that. Trent Williams is probably that guy. There was a question here. Oh, well, while we've got 140 watching, Fozzie says, "Yo, Suneil, what's your story? Great content, fellas." We won't get into Suneil's story, but Suneil's here every Tuesday, and he has a channel of his own, So Real Sports Talk. The link is in the description. Make sure you subscribe to that, and you will get to know Suneil a lot more through that. He's coming up on 1,000 subscribers, so let's help him get there. And then this channel, as you see pinned at the top of the chat, we're pushing for 6K. We're very, very close, about 120 or so away. Help us get there, trying to get there as quickly as possible, get that next milestone. We've been stuck in the 5,000s for a while, but I think we're going to get to 6K soon. Appreciate each and every one of you. Let's get to this last super chat, and then let's get to our final topics here. You guys have been carrying the show with your conversation. I appreciate it. Arturo says, I love our boy Grant, but he has to take an L on this. We should have drafted Bosa when he came out. Yeah, yeah. I wasn't into Grant's content then. I didn't know anything about Grant Cohn then, but it does sound like he was not a fan of going with Bosa. It sounds like he wanted Josh Allen potentially back then, who's a fine player. Don't get me wrong. Josh Allen's been fine, but he's certainly not Bosa by any means. So yeah, I think Grant has to take an L on this one. I also think that Grant will admit when he's wrong. Like he has no problem doing that, and I'm sure that he would tell you he was wrong on this one for sure.
Right. I apologize for almost choking on camera right now, but I'm good, guys.
No, listen, I mean, we didn't want you to die, but if you did, the show must go on. I'll just say that. There was a lot of super chats there. Let me show everybody love. Thank you, guys. Oh, that was horrible. All right. We just talked a lot about the talent on this team, but let's go specifically into the defense. We've heard that this defense is very opportunistic so far in training camp. I think they've already eclipsed the amount of interceptions that they had all of last training camp, and they're a weekend. This is absolutely crazy. Charvarius Ward has brought a whole new swagger to this, and Verrett just started practicing on his own before actual practice took place today. That is great news. This defense might get even better. And by the way, they've been without a complete interior defensive line. That's how good they've been to this point. So, question is, Suneil, how good can this defense be, in your opinion?
This defense could be the best defense in the league. That's how good that this defense could be. And the reason for it is this is the first time, I believe, in the Kyle Shanahan era where there's not a weakness at any level of this defense, right? In years previous, that even when Richard Sherman was there, they were limited in how they could play their corners. They couldn't play man-to-man back then. It always had to be, the zone coverage schemes and those type of things, which allowed for weaknesses when it came to like the one-on-one players and things like that when you are forced to play man. This is not the case anymore. Not only do they have premier like talent at every level of the defense, they're healthy. Like that's the biggest thing. Like we're talking about Jason Verrett, Thank you, by the way, Fassi. They're talking about Jason Verrett coming back, but that's not to negate that Emmanuel Mosley is playing lights out right now. He's looking like one of the best corners on the team. So, like, I think that cornerback room is elevating this defense to be able to take that next step. Because whenever you look at the 49ers defense, they've always been really good, but it's always been the pass rush. That pass rush is still going to be there. But now they're going to be able to take advantage of that pass rush through their secondary to be able to get interception, because all of these corners are very comfortable playing man-to-man. And in man-to-man coverages, that's where you get to see, more of those types of opportunistic plays, because at that point, you're just one-on-one and being able to kind of take advantage of mistakes that the quarterback or receivers might be making. So for me, Jesse, this team could be the best defense in the league, and probably one of the better defense, probably the best defense that Kyle Shanahan has ever had.
Yeah, listen, I'm right there with you. And just looking at the other defensive units across the league, I don't know if there's another team that is more complete when it comes to marrying the pass rush with the secondary. One team that jumps out to me as possibly a contender would be the Buffalo Bills. But when you look at the 49ers, they separate themselves with the linebacking core. I mean, they legitimately are probably top 5 in all 3 units: secondary, pass rush, and linebacking core. And I would say when it comes to linebacking core and pass rush, they're closer to 1 than they are 5. And then
Right.
the secondary is still probably top 5, maybe closer to 5. If it's as good as what we think it can be, I'm telling you, man, this defense is wild good. And I remember when we got Travarius Ward, I said on this very show that I think this is the best secondary the 49ers have had since that Super Bowl team in 94. And I got a lot of grief for it. But I feel like people are coming around because they are forcing a lot of turnovers. And their job is a lot easier when you have a pass rush that is as good as the 49ers pass rush. I mean, the two of them together, Swan had a comment. He talked about third down. That was the biggest issue last year. Even when the defense started clicking, I cannot get out of my mind that they had the Rams back against the wall in week 18 and again in the playoffs, and also the Titans. Many third and longs, but they could not get off the field. Like, that was their bugaboo down. I do not think that is going to be an issue this year. I think third down, allowing those pass rushers to pin their ears back, knowing that they got great protection behind them, it's there's going to be a lot of turnovers on third down. I'll say that. I think there's going to be a lot of turnovers on third down, as much or more than big third downs being given up. And I love that the defense is going to be very, very good, or should be good. And on paper, I mean, they are making moves. And I know that, some people think that interceptions and turnovers are based on luck, and they certainly can be. But when you hear that they're getting as many turnovers as they are, and they're coming from guys that either weren't here last year, or guys that traditionally do get those turnovers, then that tells you that they are legit, because Mosley's not getting the turnovers, and Mosley doesn't force a lot of turnovers for as good as he is. Ward is getting a lot of the turnovers, and that's what we'd hope that he would bring to this team. So I absolutely love it. It's crazy how good this defense can be, and we should be super excited about it.
And once again, another kudos to this front office that they went out there and got a guy like Travarius Ward, because I think people look at it and say, okay, he makes the secondary better, and that's going to make us have more interceptions or be able to cover, top receivers, which is all true. But it's also going to make the defensive line better, because the problem that the 49ers had, their defensive line had, was against good high-level quarterbacks that knew how to get the ball out of their hand quickly. You can negate the pass rush very quickly, right? But now that the 49ers can play man-to-man, no matter who's on the field in that secondary, no matter who's on the field as far as the receivers, that makes it harder now for those quarterbacks to get the ball out quickly. They have to hitch a little bit. They're not going to have, that same pass ability, that gives a guy like Nick Bosa extra half second, extra second, which now all of a sudden he's wreaking havoc. So not only will we see more turnovers, Jesse, I think we're going to see better field position as well as more sacks because now they're playing complementary all throughout their defense.
Absolutely. And this was a defense last year that got after the quarterback at a higher clip than the Rams did. And that's when the Rams had Von Miller. They don't have Von Miller anymore. The 49ers have added pieces and added to their secondary. I just, when I'm comparing it to within the division, I think they have the clear-cut best defense in the division. And it's going to be really interesting. I think they can win this division for sure outright. And you don't know what football says, but some turnovers like punching the ball out works, and it's not luck. Yeah, listen, I think some turnovers can be fluky. I think that some people have this thought that turnovers are based on luck quite a bit, and I disagree. I think players are either ball hawks or they aren't, and certain players show up statistically, whether through pass breakups or interceptions or what have you, a lot more than others. And I think that some players just are instinctual when it comes to being around the football and being around it very, very frequently. So I'm with you on that one for sure.
Ed Reed must have been a very, very lucky guy. Troy Polamalu must have been very, very lucky guys.
Yeah, the luckiest of all time. It's crazy. Golly. All right. So we talked about the defense. Let's end it on this. Let's talk about the team as a whole. Shanahan said that he believes this is the most talented team that he has had since taking over as head coach for the 49ers. We talked about the defense. We think that this probably is the best defense they've had. Now, a lot of people look at it and say, okay, well, you've got a first-year starter at quarterback. That's why a lot of people are not putting the 49ers high in their power rankings or even in the top 10. Some publications don't even have them top 5 as far as overall roster in the NFC or top 10 as far as overall roster in the NFL, which is crazy to me. That being said, what do you think about this team? How good can this team be overall? And do you think this is the best team on paper that they have had?
I do. And I look at it like this is the best secondary that Shanahan has ever had. Defensive line, I don't know if we could say it's the best that they've ever had, but I do think it's one of the deepest that they've ever had. I think this is the best linebacking core under Kyle Shanahan because of Azeez Al-Shaair's jump and already Dre and Fred Warner obviously there. Jimmy Ward obviously has been, the 49ers safety there for however many years. Yet to see how good Hufanga is compared to how Tart and Ward work together. But the receiving core, I think, is the best receiving core that they've ever had. Kittle, obviously is the same guy that's been there. I think that the running backs are going to be close, if not just as good as Shanahan has ever had. I don't think this offensive line is necessarily the best. And, yet to be seen if Trey Lance this year is going to be, better than Jimmy has been. But overall, when you're looking at just the most talented team, I think, as far as like high level talent, you have top 3 players in the league, Jesse, at so many different positions across this team, which is very unheard of throughout the NFL to have that much top level talent. And once again, it sounds like I'm a homer for this front office. Their ability to draft players, because most of this talent is homegrown and drafted and developed here. So when you're talking about guys like Bosa, Deebo, Kittle, these guys are all homegrown talent. Add a guy like Trent that came over in trades and, other players like that. I do think this is the most talented team that Kyle Shanahan has ever had. Is it the best team? That's yet to be seen because they have to actually perform. And we've seen in 2019 a roster that was very, very good that made it all the way to the Super Bowl. So we have to see if this team actually performs to put them as the best team. But as far as talent-wise, I think that if not tied for the first, they are.
That's fair. So let's say the 2019 team, the 2021 team, and, well, we could even go 2020, 2021 and this team are all on paper preseason, just going off of what's on paper, how would you power rank this team versus those teams?
Just off of paper?
Just off paper, yep.
I'd probably go 2019 is the best, right? Because they had Sherm when he was still prime and or at least playing at a high level, and they had talent all over there. I'd put this one right after that. This team right after the 2019 team, then last year's team, and then the 2020 year.
Okay. All right, that's fair. I mean, I think it's between this and the 2019 team. And the 2019 team had Ford. 2019 team had Mostert. But we didn't really know about Mostert. Like now we're looking back on it and saying, okay, Mostert, whatever. But I don't know, man. Bosa is a few years in now and is starting to peak. Deebo is not a rookie anymore. He's starting to peak. Trey Lance, obviously, there's a question mark there. Very high on him. I think Charvarius Ward at this stage in his career is better than Sherman was at that stage in his career. Trent Williams is certainly better than Staley. It would be close. It'd be close. So you're right. I mean, we're not going to know if this is the best team in the Shanny Lynch era until it actually goes out and plays. On paper, man, it's wow. I mean, again, Fred wasn't all pro Fred either,
Right.
So I don't know, man. This is close. I'm going to give the edge to this team just to be different. But I do. I think it's close. I think it's very, very close for sure. Looks like we had Pistachio coming in. He's a Dolphins fan trying to stir things up. I'll tell you what, Pistachio, I don't know if you're from Twitter or if you just happen to stumble upon the channel, but if you're from Twitter, I will say that Dolphins fans and 49er fans have created this budding rivalry. It's pretty fun to watch. And congratulations on losing your first round pick next year. And essentially you're going to get, if you're lucky, a top 25 pick, but it probably won't be that from us. So good luck with that, because if Tua's not the guy, and chances are he's not, you now probably aren't going to be able to replace him with some of those really good quarterbacks coming out next year, because you only have one draft pick to play with. So hopefully for your sake, Tua's the guy. But the 49ers are definitely going to stomp the Dolphins this year. No doubt about it. Double B Studio coming in. He says, what's up, Jesse? What's up, Double B? Let me show you some love real quick. Appreciate your contribution to the show. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the show. Again, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. We are pushing for 6K. Show some love. Would greatly appreciate it. And link is in the description. Go sub to Suneil as well. He's pushing for 1K, and 1K is huge because it means he can finally get monetized. And great people like Double B Studios and 49ers Throwbacks and everybody that contributed, Carlos, everybody that contributed to the show today. You will also be able to receive super chats, Suneil, once you reach 1,000, and that's the goal. He put in a lot of hard work to get to where he's at, and he's done it for free. So let's try to get him paid. I think he would greatly appreciate it. But we love each and every one of you. It was a blast being back with my guy Suneil. Cannot wait for next week. You all be blessed, and I'll be back tomorrow, 49ers After Dark on Grant's channel. Peace.